Sing that shit.
But before I hop right into it, I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, SeatGeek. Now, I know you guys have already heard of this app, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend that you go check it out. SeatGeek is an app that takes all the confusion out of buying a ticket. Be it a game, concert, Broadway show, whatever the occasion may be, they got you. And they even give you a out of 10 score on each ticket to know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. Green good, red bad. And if you're still kind of iffy on it, if you use my promo code ModernHoops, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. And there will be a link to it in the description box below. And remember, if you use my promo code ModernHoops, you will get $20 off your first purchase. So go check them out. So the other week, Chris Paul went down with another hamstring injury, and at this point, it seems to be a reoccurring theme in Chris Paul's career. Chris Paul has been dealing with hamstring injuries for now his 5th season, and throughout the course of his career, he's missed a total of about 19 games, including the postseason, with hamstring injuries. It may not seem like a lot, but considering the fact that some of them came at pivotal deciding moments in his career, yeah, so they've had somewhat of an impact on his career. But with that being said, in today's video, we're going to be looking at the history of Chris Paul's hamstring injuries throughout his career and what might be the cause of them. But before I go any further, if you guys haven't, go ahead and follow me on all my social medias. Links to my Twitter and Instagram will be in the comment section below and in the description box below. But with all that out of the way, let's hop right into it. So the series of hamstring injuries for Chris Paul started during the 2013-2014 NBA season, but it didn't really affect Chris Paul this season as it did in others. In the game against the Knicks, he ended up straining his right hamstring, but he only ended up missing one game that season because of it, so there's not really much to say here. But during the 2014-2015 NBA season, or to be more precise, during the postseason that year, Chris Paul would end up feeling the injury at a much worse time. After the Clippers went 56-26 and finished second in the Western Conference that season, and you know, with Chris Paul for the most part having a healthy season, they were faced with going up against the 6th-seeded Spurs in the first round that year, and it wasn't going to be easy. The series went to a full 7 games, and the final 3 games were decided by a total of only 12 points, and actually the series felt more like a conference finals. But moving on to game 7 of that series, sadly in the first quarter, Chris Paul would end up suffering a hamstring injury as he was dribbling up the court. He would end up leaving the game and headed towards the locker room, which was a huge blow to the Clippers because this was a do or die game. But luckily he did come back midway through the second quarter, but you could tell he was clearly affected by the hamstring injury that he suffered in the first quarter. He wasn't moving or running at his usual speed. The man basically played the rest of the game with the injured hamstring. But moving on to the fourth quarter, with 9 seconds left and the game tied at 109-109, Chris Paul ended up hitting the game winner of that series over Tim Duncan. But sadly, Chris Paul would end up missing game 1 and game 2 against the Rockets in the second round because of the hamstring injury he suffered in the first round. The series was tied at 1-1 and he ended up coming back in game 3, and the Clippers took a 3-1 lead against the Houston Rockets but ended up blowing it. And it's not hard to imagine that Chris Paul maybe came back a bit too early and was still feeling the effects of the injury throughout the series. Also, what if he was healthy the whole series? Maybe the Clippers could have gone up 3-0. So you know, these are just things to think about. But heading into the 2016-2017 NBA season, Chris Paul would once again have to deal with more hamstring injuries. He'd end up missing 7 games with a hamstring injury that season. Once again, it may not seem like much, but it's just not a good sign when your star player has to continuously keep dealing with the same injury each season. He was 31 at this point, and constant injuries like these are what kept him from getting that big contract from the Clippers. But now heading into the 2017-2018 NBA season, Chris Paul would end up suffering this injury at the worst possible moment in his career, which, just like 2015, was during the postseason. During the Western Conference Finals last year, the Golden State Warriors took the Houston Rockets to an intense 7-game series, and the Rockets were up 3-2 on the Warriors. But sadly, in Game 5 of that series, Chris Paul would end up suffering another hamstring injury, and he missed the rest of of the postseason. And with the Rockets missing an important piece to their team, they ended up falling to the Warriors in games 6 and 7, and it sucks because I believe if Chris Paul was healthy, they could have won the series. With Chris Paul on the floor, I highly doubt they would end up missing 27 consecutive threes in game 7, but once again, he was hit by another hamstring injury. Also, not to mention, Chris Paul did miss a couple games during the season due to sore hamstrings. But now we have this season, as once again, the other week, Chris Paul went down with another hamstring injury against the Heat and will miss about 2 to 3 weeks, and it was during the time when the Rockets were struggling to figure things out and they needed their starting point guard. Now, hamstring injuries usually happen when you're doing something that requires a lot of moving and sometimes from quick twitch positions. For example, a point guard like Chris Paul is on the floor doing a lot of running, jumping, diving for loose balls, or doing some advanced dribble techniques and things along those lines. Also, things like inadequate stretching during warm-ups is also a factor in hamstring injuries, as are fatigue and dehydration. Now, after doing some research, the reason why hamstring injuries happen so frequently is because tendons cross both the hip and knee, making them prone to over lengthening. Basically, think of it like a rubber band, and a rubber band can only stretch so far. The same thing applies with a hamstring injury, and you can do things like stretching to try to prevent them, but the truth is, there is no real foolproof way to prevent them from happening. They happen randomly, and I fear as Chris Paul gets older, these injuries might worsen. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe for more NBA content. And while you're at it, go ahead and follow me on all my social medias. Links to my Twitter and Instagram will be in the comment section below and in the description box below. But I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I will see you all later. Peace.